Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere dry, really dry. Imagine yourself in the middle of a sun-baked landscape where the earth is cracked like stale bread and the air feels like it's coming out of a hairdryer. You're in ancient Persia where the sun doesn't just rise, it dominates. The sky above you is a blank blue bowl, not a cloud in sight, and there's no refrigerator humming nearby, no air conditioning unit whispering in the corner. It's the middle of summer. You're wearing a long robe and a head wrap, but the sun has no mercy. The stones beneath your sandals are so hot you wonder if they're plotting to cook your feet. You're sweating, you're sticky, and here's the real kicker. It's 500 BCE, and there's no ice. You probably won't survive this, but hey, don't panic. The ancient Persians did, and they did it with surprising style. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Drop it in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a slow step forward. The wind is barely a whisper. The horizon shimmers like it's trying to trick you into seeing water that isn't there. But nestled somewhere in this furnace is a secret, a quiet, ancient kind of comfort, a way of surviving the scorch that doesn't involve electricity, ice cubes, or even knowing what air conditioning means. You're walking toward the heart of an old Persian village, the kind where mud-bricked buildings rise in sun-faded rows, and the alleys between them are just wide enough to let in a breeze, but not the full brunt of the sun. That's not an accident. That's survival.
Historians still argue whether these early urban planners were intentionally designing wind corridors or just building where the goats couldn't walk. But either way, the effect is the same. You step into a narrow street and suddenly, mercifully, the temperature drops by a few delicious degrees. There's an odd sort of peace to it all. No cars, no honking, just the creak of a wooden wheel in the distance and the occasional bark of a sleepy dog who's too warm to mean it. A child dashes past you, barefoot, holding a bowl of cool water that sloshes over the sides and leaves small, fast-evaporating footprints on the clay road. In this world, you don't just notice heat, you negotiate with it. And the ancients had more than a few tricks up their very loose sleeves. The first, and maybe most important, is their material of choice. Mud brick. Clay, straw, water. Stirred, slapped into molds, dried under the same sun it was meant to defend against. Mud brick walls are thick, sometimes nearly a meter. Not great for moving house, but perfect for keeping interiors cool. Thick walls mean heat takes its sweet time getting through. By the time the sun has finished punching the outside, it's bedtime and the temperature's dropped. It's a bit like living inside a baked potato. Warm on the outside, fluffy and mild within. And that's just the start. You pass a doorway, arched, tall and dark inside. There's no door, just a woven curtain that sways gently. From behind it comes the sound of trickling water, the kind of sound that makes your overheated brain send thank you notes to your ears. Inside, there's a courtyard, a sunken garden walled in on all sides. A small fountain at its center tosses up a thin thread of water. Potted plants, basil, mint, maybe a fig tree, lean toward the dampness. Shade blankets the space like a kind hand. This is where the magic happens. The Persians understood a simple truth. Water plus airflow equals cool. That tiny fountain isn't there for beauty, though it is oddly mesmerizing. It's there to make the air denser, cooler. As breezes drift over it, they carry a faint mist of moisture into nearby rooms. It's evaporative cooling, and you're standing inside the blueprint for every swamp cooler ever made.
Not bad for a civilization that never met a thermostat. Quirky side note, some wealthier homes even kept bowls of rosewater in shallow dishes near windows. As air passed over them, the room didn't just cool, it smelled like a perfume ad narrated by a camel. Not all of this was strictly practical. Ancient Persian texts sometimes suggest that certain floral breezes helped balance a person's inner hotness or humors. Whether that's true or just a dusty version of essential oils is still debated. But hey, if a jasmine breeze is all it takes to reset your soul, who's complaining? And speaking of soul, the architecture here seems almost designed to keep it intact. You stop at another home, this one taller, with a peculiar tower jutting from the rooftop. It's slatted at the top like a lantern turned inside out. We'll get to those windcatchers in a bit, but for now, your feet are hot, your robe is damp, and all you want is a patch of shade and a bowl of something wet. A woman appears in a doorway, holding a pitcher shaped like a teardrop. She offers you a drink, some kind of barley-based refreshment, cloudy and cool, labeled from a clay jug that's been sitting in a shaded nook. You take a sip and it's, honestly, kind of weird, but undeniably refreshing. The jug it came from? It's a zir, a type of porous ceramic that cools its contents through slow evaporation. As water seeps out, it draws heat with it. The result? Desert refrigeration. No buttons, no wires, just clay, water, and a solid grasp of physics. There's even some evidence that early Persians used these kinds of pots in trading posts along the silk routes, where weary travelers could drink without cracking their lips on sun-baked flasks. Historians still argue whether this knowledge traveled eastward to India and beyond, or whether similar cooling jugs arose independently. Either way, it's a gentle reminder that sometimes the best ideas don't need upgrading. You're feeling cooler now. Not cold, just not melting. Which, in this world, is a luxury. And as the sun dips slightly, casting long shadows across the mud brick, you take another sip from your strangely comforting barley drink and wonder, how else did they beat the heat? Let's keep walking. The real air conditioning is just up ahead. You keep walking through the narrowing alleyways, feet brushing the fine dust that's been swept by centuries of sandals before yours. The walls around you begin to change. They're taller now, smoother, more deliberate. You've arrived at Yazd, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on Earth, and perhaps the coolest, literally and figuratively. In Yazd, the sun may rule the sky, but it doesn't rule the architecture. Here, every structure whispers strategies to survive the scorch. This isn't just where people live, it's where they fought back against the heat with adobe and wind, and won. You look up and spot a dozen strange towers rising like chimneys across the skyline. Some lean at odd angles, like sleepy guards watching the desert. Others stand tall and symmetrical, their latticed tops catching the pale blue sky. These are bodgears, or windcatchers. But hold that thought, we're not quite ready to climb them yet. First, you step into one of the city's famed homes. The doorway is low, almost deliberately so, as if to remind you to humble yourself before you enter. The temperature drops instantly by a few degrees the moment you pass through the arch. It's not magic.
It's millennia of architectural engineering wrapped in mud and wisdom. The walls are thick enough to make you wonder how long it took them to build by hand, but they hold back the heat with impressive stubbornness. The floors are made from packed earth, sometimes covered with woven mats, sometimes tiled in faded blues and greens that once echoed paradise. Inside, a middle courtyard waits, always the heart of a Persian home. It's sunken, shaded, and centered around a small pool. Birds flit in and out, chirping like they're auditioning for a calming soundtrack. You could fall asleep right here, leaning back against a cushion, fanning yourself lazily while the trickling water plays backup vocals to your nap.
This oasis in a house design wasn't just a matter of taste. It was an act of climate survival. Yazd sits between two of Iran's harshest deserts, Dasht-e-Kevir and Dasht-e-Lut, both about as forgiving as a cactus in a headlock. With daytime temperatures regularly soaring past 40 degrees Celsius, that's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit for those of you watching from Fahrenheit land, cooling your living space was a matter of endurance. Now, here's the quirky bit. In Yazd, some homes had what's called a sardab, literally a cold room built below ground level. These weren't cellars for pickles and regret. They were habitable rooms, often with domed ceilings and thick walls, strategically placed at the bottom of the house where the temperature remained far more stable year-round. In a world without freezers, the sardab was your VIP lounge of chill. Some historians still argue whether sardabs were primarily designed for storage or for sleeping, or whether they were used for both, depending on the season. Whatever the case, the moment you step into one, the shift is palpable. The air is heavier, denser. The walls feel like they've been exhaling coolness for centuries. You're handed a woven hand fan by a teenage boy who doesn't say much, but smiles with his eyes. You start fanning slowly, watching the light move across the walls. There's no artificial breeze, but the air feels like it's been waiting for you all day. Now here's a delightful contradiction. Despite all the heat, Yazd has some of the lowest precipitation levels in the country, which raises an interesting question. Where does the water come from? You glance down at the tiled floor. Somewhere beneath your feet, channels called qanats are silently flowing. We'll get to those soon enough, but for now, just imagine living in a house where your water comes from an invisible underground stream dug by hand, gently sloping across miles of desert, guided only by ancient math and sheer stubbornness. Back upstairs, the sun has shifted. Shadows crawl up the walls like lazy lizards. The flat rooftop beckons, your next destination. Climbing the stairs, you realize something important. The roof isn't just a roof. It's a stage, a bedroom, a weather report, and sometimes a party venue. In Yazd, people often slept on their rooftops during summer. The breeze, however faint, was better than a stuffy sardab. Mosquito nets would be strung up like dreamy tents. Families lay out side by side, the stars blinking approval above.
And yes, occasionally someone would roll off the edge in their sleep, but mostly they didn't. The quirky detail here? Some homes had little rooftop nooks, like waist-high fences or partial walls, to keep sleepers from literally counting stars with their faces. Others had raised platforms that doubled as beds and observation decks. The rooftop wasn't just for sleeping either. It was also where you caught wind, both literally and figuratively. You could see what the neighbors were cooking, what the sky was plotting, and whether the goats were up to anything shady. But now, let's look up once more at those bajirs. The tallest among them is at least 30 feet high. You climb another narrow stairwell, this time into a small side building attached to the main home. It's like stepping into a giant clay chimney, cool, shaded, and lined with slatted openings near the top. This, finally, is the windcatcher, the star of tonight's show. Its job? To harvest every whisper of breeze in a 100-mile radius and funnel it straight down into the house. And it works shockingly well. Wind enters through one or more of the tower's directional slats, passes over cool water at the base of the shaft, sometimes a pool, sometimes just wet clay, and flows into the rooms below. No motors, no blades, just air, architecture, and a bit of evaporation magic. There's still scholarly debate over exactly how efficient these towers were compared to, say, modern HVAC systems, but one thing is clear. They made unbearable summers bearable, and they did it with no moving parts. Standing inside the base of the windcatcher, you hear it, a low hum like the sigh of a tired god. The wind passes by your ears and cools the sweat on your neck. Someone upstairs drops a metal ladle. The echo travels down like a sleepy bell. It's quiet, but alive. You sit down, back against the cool plaster wall. Outside, the sun is still intense, but here, inside the clay lungs of Yazd, you are calm, cool, and, admit it, a little impressed. This was how ancient Persians cooled their homes without ice, and you've only just scratched the surface. You stay seated for a while inside the base of the windcatcher, letting the gentle airflow brush past your face like a sleepy cat winding around your shoulders. The quiet here isn't empty. It's full of presence, of past footsteps, hushed conversations, and maybe even a few ghosts fanning themselves with palm fronds. Eventually, you stand up and stretch, neck a little stiff from leaning against centuries of dried mud. You begin descending the steps, padding back into the shaded courtyard below, past the shallow pool and jasmine bushes that seem to breathe coolness into the day. Your gaze drifts to the walls again, those humble, sun-baked barriers between the roasting world and this calm interior. It's time to appreciate the quiet heroes of Persian architecture, mud bricks. At first glance, they don't look like much, just rectangles of clay, dried in the sun, stacked with a bit of mortar and a lot of hope. But these bricks, khesht in Persian, were the foundation of cooling strategies across the empire. Made from a mix of soil, water, straw, and sometimes even animal dung. Yes, you can wrinkle your nose. They were pressed into wooden molds and left to cure under the same relentless sun they were meant to defy. The secret lies in their simplicity. Unlike modern concrete or stone, mud bricks are breathable. They absorb moisture from the air during the cooler hours of night, then release it slowly throughout the day. It's like having a wall that sweats politely on your behalf. Some historians suggest that skilled brickmakers knew how to tailor bricks to specific microclimates. Drier desert towns used different ratios of straw to clay than those closer to mountainous regions. Whether that's architectural science or just local tradition is still up for debate, but the result was always the same: thick, insulating walls that held on to coolness like a camel hoards water. And speaking of thickness, some of these walls were over 1 meter wide. You could stand sideways inside one if you didn't mind feeling like the filling in a dusty sandwich. The sheer mass of the wall created what's known today as thermal inertia, a fancy term for slow to heat up, slow to cool down. In practice, it meant that by the time the day's heat tried to bake its way into your home, the sun had already set. That's why Persian homes stayed so still and calm during the daytime. The walls weren't fighting the heat, they were outsmarting it. You reach out and place your hand on one of those old walls. It's surprisingly cool to the touch, even though you're just a few feet from a courtyard that's glowing in the afternoon sun. The bricks feel solid but textured, like the surface of a homemade cookie left on a windowsill too long. A lizard scurries across the top, flicks its tail at you, and disappears. There's something oddly comforting about it all. No machines, no buzzing, just the earth itself, shaped, stacked, and standing guard. Now, let's talk about the roofs. Not the breezy sleepovers of Section 2, but the roofs themselves. Many Persian homes feature domed or vaulted ceilings, sometimes even in rooms meant to stay cool year-round. These weren't just architectural flair, they had function. Domes helped distribute air evenly, prevented hot air from settling too low, and funneled rising warmth upward, where it could escape through cleverly placed vents. And when domes weren't practical, they used high ceilings instead. You step into a reception room, long abandoned, dust-muffled, but still elegant in its bones, and you can feel the air stratify. Warm near the top, cooler down below where you'd actually be sitting. Some rooms even had multiple layers to their roofs, a flat ceiling beneath a higher one with small openings between. These created a natural chimney effect, allowing heat to escape upward while cooler air slipped in below. Modern architects still borrow this trick, only now they slap a patent on it and call it eco-ventilation. Quirky aside, in a few archaeological digs around Yazd and other Persian cities, researchers have found small ceramic jars embedded in walls, hollow, sealed at one end. Theories vary wildly. Some say they were sound amplifiers, like ancient intercoms. Others believe they regulated moisture or helped airflow in mysterious ways. Historians still argue whether these wall jars were cooling tech or just a mason's idea of interior decor gone rogue.
You smile at the thought. Somewhere, an ancient Persian builder is still laughing. As you wander further, you pass a family home where the inside walls are painted in pale pastels, soft yellows and faded blues. Light colors reflect heat, not absorb it, another quiet decision in the war against roasting alive. And the floors? Sometimes packed clay, sometimes cool stone, sometimes carpeted with thick, lush rugs. Yes, rugs in summer. But here's the thing, rugs insulated against both heat and cold, depending on the weave and placement. Plus, they were nice to lie on while sipping sour cherry juice and pretending you weren't sweating. You pause to imagine it, reclining against a cushion, a brass tray nearby with a slice of melon, a breeze tugging the edge of your tunic. Somewhere, a water wheel turns with a creak. Somewhere else, someone's baking flatbread. You're not just cooled, you're transported. And that's the magic of mud brick and traditional Persian design. It doesn't fight the desert, it joins it. It uses the very elements you think are unbearable, the heat, the dust, the dryness, and turns them into tools for comfort. By now, the late afternoon sun is tilting toward evening, its golden light making everything look like it's been lightly toasted. You feel cooler, somehow more at home than you expected to be in this desert realm. The home you're in has been standing for centuries. Its mud bricks have been patched, painted, maybe even cursed at a few times. But they're still here, still cool, still doing their slow, silent work. You step outside again, squinting a bit as the brightness returns. Your skin is warm now, but not burning. Your robe flutters gently. There's a slight breeze, just enough to carry the scent of cumin and sun-warmed dates from someone's kitchen. Time to follow that scent. Maybe see what other tricks the ancient Persians had up their very wide sleeves. You follow the scent of cumin, which feels like it's being carried by a breeze designed just for your nose. A turn down a narrow alley, then another,
and suddenly you find yourself standing beneath one of the most peculiar and impressive inventions of the ancient Persian world, the badgir, or windcatcher. You've seen a few already, poking up from rooftops like elegant chimneys with a twist. But now you're right below one. Towering, angular, and proud, it leans slightly, like it's listening to the desert air. And in a way, it is. Let's climb up and meet this strange beast properly. You duck through a low archway, climb a tight spiral staircase, and feel the temperature shift as you ascend. The higher you go, the cooler the walls become. Not cold, just less affected by the sun's tantrum outside. By the time you reach the windcatcher chamber, the difference is so noticeable you could mistake it for morning. Now you're inside the column. It's hollow, and the air moving through it sounds like a river pretending to be a whisper. It enters through the slated sides, narrow openings facing the dominant wind directions, and flows down with the grace of a particularly polite ghost. This is where Persian ingenuity really flexes. The windcatcher isn't just a hollow shaft. Some versions had internal vanes or partitions that redirected the airflow, allowing the system to choose which direction to pull wind from, depending on which way it was blowing. You, standing inside one of these ancient towers, are essentially inside a giant, breathable lung that inhales desert breeze and exhales it into the home below. And it gets better. Many windcatchers were connected to qanats, those underground aqueducts we'll explore in detail soon. Picture this. Hot, dry wind is pulled down through the tower. As it reaches the bottom, it passes over or near a channel of cool, flowing water. The air temperature drops significantly, thanks to evaporation, and by the time it wafts into the rooms below, it's a gentle, cool current. Like Mother Nature herself just offered you a personal fan and a glass of pomegranate juice. Some badgirs were even outfitted with small pools or ceramic dishes placed strategically to maximize evaporation. These were the precursors to evaporative coolers, what some call swamp coolers today. But they didn't require any electricity, just physics, patience, and a very dry climate. Quirky fact: archaeologists studying windcatchers in cities like Yazd and Bam have discovered at least a dozen different designs: single direction, multi-direction, square, hexagonal, even ones with internal ducts that redirected airflow from room to room. One particularly ambitious home reportedly had a windcatcher that rotated slightly on a base so it could face the wind directly, like the weather vanes of Persian nobility. Historians still argue whether this rotating design was widely used or just a rich man's experiment that didn't catch on. Either way, the image of a desert tower slowly turning like a lazy ballerina in the wind is oddly soothing. You step back from the inner shaft and lean on a thick beam. Through the slatted top of the tower, you can see the pale sky overhead and hear the rustling of leaves down below. A flock of pigeons settles on a nearby dome, puffing and cooing as if they too know they found the coolest spot in the neighborhood. Standing in this tower, you feel like you're in a temple, not one of gods, but of design. Everything here is purposeful. The height, the direction, the materials. You're surrounded by mud brick, clay mortar, maybe even bits of straw still wedged between cracks. It's imperfect, crumbling in places, but it works. Let's imagine a day in the life of someone who lived here, say around 700 years ago. Morning begins before dawn. The windcatcher is already pulling in the cool night air, which has been sliding over the qanats and pooling gently in the lower rooms. You wake up on the rooftop, your blanket light, your body dewy from night breezes. The stars are still out. You descend into the house just as the sun crests the horizon. The rooms are dark, but the air inside is already preparing for the day. Doors and windows remain closed, not to keep you in, but to trap the coolness. For hours, the house resists the outside heat. Only in the late afternoon does the Badgir begin its real work, pulling in wind and sending it through the structure like a silent servant with a hand fan. By evening, the lower floors remain pleasant. You eat dinner near the fountain in the courtyard, maybe some grilled eggplant, flatbread, and sour yogurt. The Badgir huffs softly above, exhaling the last of the sun's heat. It's not just a tower, it's a daily companion, a partner in survival. Now here's a fun twist. These towers weren't just for cooling. In some wealthier homes and public buildings, windcatchers were part of a full airflow system that worked year-round. In winter, openings could be adjusted or sealed off to keep warm air in. In rare cases, paired with hypocaust-style underground heating systems, the same architecture helped regulate both ends of the temperature spectrum. You glance up again at the intricate top of the Badgir. It's like a lantern cage, but with wind instead of flame. Birds circle, the air moves, and you take a slow breath. It's peaceful here, cooling in a way that feels earned. And yes, there are debates. Historians still argue whether the Persians invented the windcatcher or borrowed the concept from earlier Egyptian or Babylonian designs. There's evidence of similar towers in ancient Mesopotamia, but nowhere did the concept flourish quite like it did in Persia. It wasn't just adopted, it was perfected. You leave the tower and descend again into the home, now with new appreciation for what was happening above your head all along. A system so elegant, so quiet, and so brilliantly low-tech, it feels like the opposite of everything we stress about today. Your feet touch the shaded ground again. The breeze now feels personal, like a companion. You smile. And just when you think the Persians couldn't possibly have done more with air, mud, and water, you remember something. We haven't even gotten to the underground rivers yet. Let's go find one. You step out of the shaded courtyard, back into the still warm glow of the early evening. The sun is drooping now, stretching long shadows like sleepy cats across the baked earth. But you're headed somewhere darker, deeper, colder, because what comes next in this Persian cooling adventure lives beneath your feet. You've heard whispers of it already, passing mentions and faint gurgles in quiet corners. The qanat, ancient Persia's hidden water highways. So let's follow that whisper. Let's go underground. You're led by a man in dusty sandals who beckons you toward a small domed structure rising modestly in an open courtyard. It looks like a well house, or maybe a shrine. But as you draw closer, you notice something different. There's a stairway descending steeply into the earth, cool air wafting up like breath from a sleeping cave. You descend. Each step takes you into deeper shade, into thicker, damper air. You hear it before you see it, a slow, steady trickle, like a shy stream humming to itself. And then, at the bottom of the stairs, a narrow tunnel opens before you. The light fades to twilight gray. You squint, and there it is, water. Real water, flowing through the desert's bones. This is a qanat, part miracle, part math, part madness. It's an underground aqueduct, dug by hand, often for miles, with a gentle, almost spiritual slope, so that water from distant mountain aquifers can glide silently down into the city, pulled only by gravity and sheer human will. No pumps, no pipes, just picks, shovels, and an understanding of the land that borders on supernatural. To build one of these was a feat of both patience and precision. First, workers had to identify a water source, usually a spring or underground stream at the foot of a mountain. Then they calculated the perfect slope, not too steep or the water would erode the tunnel, not too flat or it wouldn't flow. It had to be just right. Think Goldilocks with a measuring stick and a lot more sand in her shoes. Then came the digging. Vertical shafts, like narrow wells, were dug every 20 to 30 meters. These weren't for collecting water, but for lowering workers, hauling up earth and giving the diggers fresh air. They were like breathing holes for the tunnel, which stretched quietly from mountain to settlement, often for dozens of kilometers.
You're walking beside one now, ducking slightly where the roof dips low. The walls are smooth, worn down by centuries of patient trickling. In places, small alcoves have been carved for resting or perhaps prayer. You run your fingers along the cool stone, marveling at the absence of tools, of noise, of stress. It feels ancient, sacred even, and in many ways it was. Qanats weren't just engineering projects, they were lifelines. Cities like Yazd, Nishapur, and Kerman depended on them completely. No qanat, no city. Simple as that. And here's the cooling connection. In many homes, like the one you just visited, qanats were routed directly beneath the building. The cold water flowing beneath the house chilled the air above it. In some cases, special flues or channels guided the airflow from the qanat into the rooms, combining the evaporative power of the windcatcher with the icy breath of the earth. It's like the world's oldest air conditioning unit, built entirely from mud, stone, and silence. You sit now on a low ledge beside the water, listening. The air is rich with minerals and history. You take a breath, then another. Your body temperature drops just a little more, not uncomfortably, just enough to feel held. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some qanat tunnels were used as secret escape routes during times of invasion. Hidden doors in the basements of homes or mosques could lead into the tunnel network. Stories persist, half legend, half truth, of nobles escaping unseen beneath the city, guided by the very water that once filled their fountains. Historians still argue whether such stories are fanciful inventions or misremembered versions of trade and maintenance routes. But even so, the image is compelling. Robes swishing in the dark, torchlight flickering on wet stone, escape through the water veins of the earth. You stand and walk further down the passage. A torch has been lit somewhere ahead, its golden glow reflecting in the water. You pass under another shaft where a column of cool air falls straight onto your shoulders. It's like a vertical breeze, so unexpected it makes you chuckle. Suddenly, you feel more awake. The air down here might be sleepy, but it's also sharp, ancient. A reminder that beneath the surface of cities and time, there are always quiet systems keeping everything alive. Back above ground, qanats often ended in small domed buildings called ab-anbars, cisterns that stored water for daily use. These were usually semi-underground, with thick insulation and often their own windcatchers. Picture a round clay structure, half hidden in the earth, cool to the touch, with water so clear it reflects the ceiling like a mirror. Some even had steps inside, descending in a spiral to reach the water. You'd bring a ceramic jug, dip it into the basin, and carry it home, still sweating from the effort, but already imagining the first cool sip. You make your way back up the stairs now, emerging from the qanat into the evening light. The sky has turned a muted peach. Shadows stretch long.
The air feels warm again, but not oppressive, more like a reminder, a whisper that yes, the heat still exists, but you know its secrets now. You glance back at the domed entrance to the qanat, quiet, humble, but housing an entire world of water and wonder beneath. Not bad for a system invented nearly 3,000 years ago and still in use today. And to think, we've only just made it back to the surface. There's more to cool than wind and water. What about the spaces where they met? Let's slip into one. Let's walk into a courtyard where the heat gets tricked into behaving itself. You move slowly now, half lulled by the memory of water and stone. The air is still warm, but it no longer presses against you. It's merely present, like a soft quilt in late summer. And you're stepping into yet another marvel of Persian design, one that might be your favorite so far. You're standing at the edge of a Persian courtyard, but not just any courtyard. This one has been crafted with the same patience and precision that shaped the qanats and windcatchers. This, too, is part of the cooling symphony.
You push open a low wooden door, its hinges creaking slightly, and step inside. The noise of the outside world, whatever it was, evaporates. There's silence here, but not the hollow kind. This silence is thick, textured, alive with little things, birds shifting in trees, water whispering into a pool, the occasional distant clink of ceramic on stone. Before you lies a garden, arranged in quadrants, 4 symmetrical patches of green separated by narrow stone walkways. In the center, a shallow pool, smooth as glass. You take a step closer and look in. The sky is reflected perfectly, upside down, serene, and infinitely still. This is a sharbagh, a traditional Persian garden, but it's more than just pretty, it's cooling. You sit on a low stone bench under the shade of a pomegranate tree. You're not sweating, you're not fanning yourself. Yet somehow, despite the desert surrounding you, you feel calm and cool. Why? Because every element here is doing quiet, invisible work. The pool in the center? It's not just decorative. The water absorbs the heat from the air, and as it evaporates, slowly, silently, it draws warmth away, lowering the ambient temperature. The stone paths and surrounding walls help retain the night's coolness, slowly releasing it during the heat of day. And the plants? They're not randomly chosen. Many Persian gardens favored broad-leaved shade trees, cypress, fig, mulberry. Not just because they're lovely, but because their leaves filter the light, creating dappled shade that keeps things gentle. Too much shade, and it feels gloomy. Too little, and it's blinding. But this is just right. There's a lemon tree a few feet away. A soft breeze tousles its branches, sending a faint citrus scent drifting toward you. You lean back and take it in, vaguely aware that you're now part of an ancient conversation between architecture, nature, and air. Here's a quirk. The layout of Persian gardens, especially the sharbagh, wasn't just practical, it was cosmic. The 4 sections symbolized the 4 Zoroastrian elements: earth, water, air, and fire. Some scholars argue they were a physical representation of paradise itself, which in Persian is literally paradisa, an enclosed garden. So when you're sitting in a Persian courtyard, you're not just lounging in a garden, you're chilling in a vision of the afterlife. Not bad for an afternoon rest.
You hear a splash. A bird has just landed at the edge of the pool and is hopping around, flicking water into the air. Tiny droplets catch the sunlight like floating glass. You smile. Even the birds seem to understand this place is sacred. But Persian courtyards didn't just rely on greenery and water. The architecture itself played a clever game with the elements. The walls were thick, sometimes over a meter deep. Made from mud brick or adobe, they insulated the space, keeping out daytime heat and holding on to nighttime cool. And the orientation? Not random. Buildings were usually arranged around the courtyard with intention. South-facing rooms got more sun in winter, helping them to warm. North-facing ones stayed in shade, perfect for hot summers. Some rooms opened directly into the courtyard with large wooden doors or latticed windows, allowing cool air to drift gently inside. In wealthier homes, these openings were fitted with colored glass, casting soft reds and blues across the floor as the sun moved. It's like living inside a kaleidoscope, but one that wants you to nap. You walk now along one edge of the courtyard, trailing your hand across the warm stone. You pause by a small alcove, a half-indoor, half-outdoor space known as an iwan. It's arched, shaded, and open on one side, catching every breeze. It's a bit like sitting on the world's most ancient screened-in porch. Inside the iwan, you settle onto a low divan covered in embroidered fabric. You lie back, sip from a clay cup of rose water, and listen to the courtyard breathe. Historians still argue whether Persian gardens influenced European landscape design directly or if the similarities are coincidence. But either way, the charm of the courtyard has echoed across continents. Napoleon had a garden. So did Mughal emperors, Roman aristocrats, and Moorish caliphs. But few were quite as functional as the Persian Chaibagh. It wasn't about peacocks and gold statues. It was about surviving summer with elegance. Even more clever? In some homes, the courtyard wasn't just a nice place to sit. It was the coolest place to sleep, literally. During hot months, families would move their sleeping mats outside, lying under the stars, surrounded by scented trees and burbling water. If you've ever drifted off to the sound of a fountain and the feel of a breeze brushing your arm, you know exactly why they did this.
Tonight, you could do the same. Your guide nods toward a quiet corner of the garden, where a soft mattress has been rolled out beneath a trellis of grapevines. The sky above is deepening. The first star has already blinked into view. But not just yet. There's one more cooling trick to explore. You rise, stretch lazily, and take one last glance around this little patch of engineered paradise. Then you follow a gently curving corridor away from the courtyard, toward a room with thick walls, stone floors, and the promise of even deeper coolness. It's time for ice. Yes, real ice. In the middle of the desert. Let's find out how that's possible. The hallway darkens as you step away from the courtyard, trading birdsong for the soft hush of stone on your sandals. The air is noticeably cooler, almost as if the architecture itself has sensed your rising body temperature and decided to help out. You're being led toward a domed structure that looks, at first glance, like a squat mud brick silo. Not particularly flashy. No elegant latticework, no scent of flowers or trickling water. But as you step inside, a delicious chill creeps up your spine. You've just entered a yakchal, literally an ice pit. Yes, you heard that right. In ancient Persia, particularly in the arid plateau regions where temperatures soared during the day and plummeted at night, people were making and storing ice long before refrigerators or electricity. You pause, letting your eyes adjust. The inside of the yakchal is dim, round, and surprisingly cavernous. It narrows toward the top in a conical dome, sort of like a beehive turned upside down. The floor beneath you dips low into a sunken chamber.
If you were to walk down that gentle ramp into the base, you'd be standing where blocks of ice were once stacked and preserved, even in the peak of summer. But let's rewind, because the real magic here isn't just the storage. It's how the ice was made in the first place. Your guide gestures out a side entrance, and you follow into a wide, shallow basin flanked by low walls. It's winter, imagine that. And at night, the desert temperature drops below freezing. Water is poured into the basin in thin sheets. Because the walls shield the surface from wind and retain cold air, ice forms rapidly. The next morning, workers harvest the frozen sheets and carry them carefully inside the yakchal. Block by block, the ice is stacked in the underground pit, each layer separated by insulating straw or sawdust to prevent melting. Then the dome is sealed, except for a few narrow ventilation shafts at the top, which let hot air rise and escape while cool air pools below. The thick walls of the dome, made of a special mortar called saruj, a mix of clay, lime, egg whites, yes, egg whites, sand and ash. This blend was not only waterproof, but nearly impermeable to heat. Think of it as ancient climate control, with a dash of meringue. Some yakchals could preserve ice for months, even into the blazing heat of July. Historians still argue whether these structures were solely used for ice, or if they doubled as cool pantries for dairy, meat, and rosewater sweets. The answer probably depends on the region and the wealth of the household. But one thing's certain: a pitcher of cool, sour cherry juice on a 100-degree day, that's motivation enough to build an ice fortress. You crouch slightly, running your fingers along the interior wall. It's cool and a bit rough, like weathered sandstone. Above you, a small shaft of light spills down from the oculus, illuminating the center of the chamber. Dust dances in the beam like golden snow. Here's a quirky little tidbit. Some of these ice pits were communal, maintained by a village or district. Ice wasn't just for aristocrats. On feast days or weddings, it might be doled out in chipped pieces, wrapped in cloth, and carried home like treasure. And in the wealthiest cities, ice became a kind of social currency. You had guests, you served chilled drinks. You threw a banquet, you brought out the frozen melon. Prestige served frosty. But it wasn't all practical. In a few Persian poems, there are references to ice delivered to lovers, a lump hidden in a handkerchief, a secret summer gift, something cool to hold on hot skin and melt slowly with longing. Ice as romance. You have to love it. You close your eyes and imagine it now. The smell of mud walls, the weight of dry air, and the sudden shock of a cold touch on your wrist in the heat. A luxury born not of wealth, but of patience, ingenuity, and a deep understanding of nature. Back in the yakchal, you take a long, slow breath. The air is a little heavier here, like the earth is breathing back at you. You wonder how many people, over how many centuries, stood right where you are, letting their skin cool in this exact spot. It's oddly intimate, quietly radical, because this isn't just ice storage. This is a civilization looking the desert square in the face and going, yeah, we'll take that heat and raise you sorbet. You chuckle softly, and now, warmed by the cleverness, but chilled by the stones, you're ready to step back into the sun. The door opens and dry light spills in, but now you carry the memory of ice with you.
And like ancient Persians before you, you're off in search of the next cooling trick. Because we've covered water, gardens, shade, and ice. But there's one more player in this thermal symphony. Time to meet the architectural heartbeat of every truly chill Persian home, the central summer room. Designed not just for shelter, but for the dreamiest kind of mid-afternoon nap. You step forward, ready to sprawl. You wander back through a narrow hallway, your steps soft against sun-warmed stone, and emerge once more into the heart of a Persian home, this time led toward a place built for the hottest hours of the day. There's no fan, no AC hum this time. But what you find instead is stillness, a heavy, cooling hush, a place where the heat doesn't dare follow. This is the summer room, known traditionally as the Tabastan Nashin, literally the summer sitting place. And if you thought the Yakchal was impressive, this is where the ancient Persian genius for passive cooling reaches full architectural poetry. You shuffle toward the center of the space. The ceiling is high and domed. The walls are thick enough to make a medieval castle jealous. Each corner is curved, designed to whisper the air in spirals instead of letting it crash awkwardly into hot angles. Every inch has been calculated to soothe, not just shelter. There's a house, a shallow pool in the middle of the floor. You kneel beside it, dipping your fingers into the cool water. It's fed from the same underground qanat you remember walking above hours ago. The water isn't icy, but it's cooler than the air, and as it evaporates, it takes a little heat with it, just enough to feel the difference against your cheeks. This room is the true anti-heat bunker of the Persian home. And here's the trick. It's often buried a few feet below the main level, partially subterranean, surrounded on all sides by shaded walls and thick mud brick. Some even have a windcatcher, or bud gear, you remember from earlier, positioned above like a silent air whisperer. It pulls the air down, passing it over the water surface in the pool and into the space below. You can almost hear it, a low, cooling sigh, like the house exhaling on your behalf. Historians still argue whether these rooms were reserved only for daytime lounging, or if entire families slept here in summer. Some sources suggest the wealthier classes had a hierarchy of rooms, one for day sitting, one for night sleeping, and one for impressing guests with, of course, the most dramatically cool breezes. Because nothing says hospitality like walking into a home where it's 20 degrees cooler than outside. But even the humbler homes had their own versions. A small underground chamber, a shaded niche, even a water jug placed strategically near a window. Cooling wasn't just about technology, it was about attention. Tiny, daily choices that whispered, "We see you, son. We raise you a nap." You lie back on a woven mat beside the pool, the scent of damp stone rising around you. Somewhere overhead, a fly buzzes lazily against the dome, then gives up. Smart fly, better to rest. The walls around you are decorated in gentle geometric patterns, nothing loud or flashy, just subtle plasterwork, faintly raised. You trace a swirl with your eyes and let your mind drift. Here's a fringe tidbit. In some aristocratic homes, these rooms doubled as sound chambers. The dome's acoustics were so precise that a whisper across the pool could be heard perfectly on the opposite end, which is either charmingly romantic or an early form of espionage. Depends on the day.
And there's more. Some summer rooms had embedded rosewater spritzers, small clay pots you could fill and tip just so to dampen the floors or release a faint floral scent. The evaporative cooling combined with perfume, created a soft, sensory balm. One scholar even described it as walking into the breath of a garden. Dramatic, yes, but as you lie here, surrounded by the hush of air and the faint gurgle of water, it honestly doesn't sound too far off. You begin to notice something else, the rhythm of this place. The architecture trains your body to slow down. No harsh transitions, no doors slamming, just soft curves, trickling sounds, shaded corners, and thick cushions calling you downward. This is intentional design, tuned not to productivity, but to stillness. And yet, this wasn't luxury for luxury's sake. In a desert climate where noon sun could scorch skin in minutes, cooling was survival. These homes didn't fight the environment, they harmonized with it. Like a camel's eyelashes or a cactus's skin, the summer room is adaptation with style. You're not just being cooled, you're being cared for by mud brick and breeze. You open one eye slightly and let it rest on the ceiling again. A small patch of blue sky peeks through a shaft above. You remember that at night, this same room would be lit with oil lamps, casting trembling shadows across the dome. And in those shadows, children would curl up beside parents, listening to quiet stories, drifting off to sleep with a full belly and a cool forehead. It's all so deliciously slow. And you're right on schedule. Somewhere between, maybe I'll sit for a bit, and oops, it's been 3 hours. You smile. And just as you're about to fully doze, you're nudged, gently, mentally, toward one last old-school cooling method you haven't yet explored. Not architecture, not water, not air, clothing. Because when all else fails, what you wear or don't makes all the difference. So brush off the imaginary dust, stretch a bit like a lazy lizard, and prepare to dress like a summer-ready Persian noble, or maybe a weary camel driver. Either way, comfort is the goal.
You step out of the summer room, rubbing your arms where the air had kissed them cool, and walk toward the edge of a sun-drenched courtyard. The light hits like a wall, golden, heavy, and immediate. You squint upward, no clouds, no mercy. This, you realize, is where clothing becomes strategy. Let's talk desert fashion, Persian style. It's not about looking regal or making bold fashion statements, though, to be fair, ancient Persians had a flair for elegance. But primarily, it's about keeping you alive and slightly smug in the face of 40 degrees Celsius afternoons. First thing to notice, layers. That's right. In a place where the air itself could roast dates, people didn't strip down, they wrapped up. Sounds backwards, right? You're picturing modern beachwear, not full-length tunics and veils. But here's the surprising genius. Covering the skin protects it from direct sunlight, creates shade on your body, and traps cooler air close to your skin. The loose fit? That's ventilation on the go. Air swirls under each layer like a mobile wind catcher. You're basically walking around in your own tiny fabric yakchal. So, what did you wear? If you were a noble or high official in Achaemenid times, think 5th century BCE, you'd likely be dressed in a kandis, a long-sleeved cloak draped over a tunic. It might look ceremonial, but it had real thermal logic. It was often made of fine wool or linen, materials chosen as much for breathability as for their status signal. Historians still argue whether the kandis was purely functional or if it developed from horse rider culture, where wind protection and dust shielding were daily battles. Either way, it stayed in vogue across centuries. even depicted on Persepolis reliefs, entire stone processions of layered, calm, cool men bearing gifts. But let's not forget the less glorified, but far more relatable, everyday workers. If you were a farmer, trader, or builder, you might have worn a simple cotton or linen tunic, tied at the waist, sometimes with loose trousers underneath. Headwear was essential. A wrapped turban or headscarf kept the sun from roasting your scalp, and also caught sweat before it could trickle down and sting your eyes. Very thoughtful, that headscarf. And yes, they had sweat. They weren't desert wizards, but they were practical, patient, and well-dressed for the occasion.
Now here's a curious tidbit. Some communities used clay-lined sandals, which, when dampened, kept feet cool for hours. That's right, ancient air-conditioned shoes. Not the kind of thing Nike's making just yet, but maybe they should. Let's pause on materials for a moment. Linen, prized for being lightweight and airy, was a summer favorite, but cotton, introduced later, had a moment of glory too. There's even archaeological evidence of cotton textiles in Persia from as early as the Sasanian period, around the 3rd century CE. Cotton was softer, sometimes cooler, and, let's be honest, less scratchy than wool. And speaking of debates, there's scholarly chatter about perfumed fabrics. Some say elite Persians would soak their robes in rose water, allowing the scent to release as the wearer moved, with added cooling from evaporation. Others argue this was more poetic exaggeration than daily habit. But you know what? You lean toward believing it. There's something deeply Persian about turning sweat prevention into an olfactory experience. But let's say you're traveling. You're trudging across arid plains, midday sun overhead, your sandals puffing dust with every step. The outfit you'd want? Layers again. Light tunic, loose trousers, a face wrap to filter dust and block glare, and something called a chador, a wide cloth you could use to shade yourself, shield goods, or even pitch as a makeshift tent flap in a pinch. Not everyone wore one daily, but it's a handy desert Swiss Army cloak. And you pull it tight, let it flutter in the breeze, and imagine yourself part of a dusty caravan headed toward a cool oasis on the edge of a mountain. But here's the most unexpected thing about Persian summer clothing. It wasn't always pale. You'd think light colors would dominate. And yes, white, beige, and sand-colored robes were common. But bold dyes made from saffron, indigo, and madder root were also used, especially among the upper classes. Red in the desert? That's a statement. One scholar even described a nobleman from the 10th century who wore a crimson robe in the height of summer as a sign that he feared neither heat nor God. A bit dramatic, but very fashionable. So now you're outfitted. Light layers, airy fabric, head wrap slightly askew. You may not feel like a runway model, but you're surprisingly comfortable and proud of your thermal dignity. Oh, and don't forget the fan. Not an electric one, of course, but a hand fan made of woven palm or ostrich feathers. Wealthier homes had them. Some were even attached to pulley systems so servants could create a breeze during meals. You have the manual version, and you wave it gently now, not because you're desperate for air, but because it feels deliciously regal. And that's the thing. Whether you were a craftsman or a queen, Persian dress wasn't about pretending the heat didn't exist. It was about collaborating with it, draping yourself in understanding, knowledge, and just a little style. So now that you're dressed for the elements, it's time to look at one more piece of the cooling puzzle: food and drink. Because what you put in your body mattered as much as what you put on it. And the ancient Persians had their own menu of heat-defying recipes. some of which might surprise you. You reach for a clay cup on the table beside you, cool to the touch, a slight dew forming on its curved surface. Inside, a cloudy, pale liquid swirls with a handful of crushed mint leaves. This, you're told, is sekanjabin, a traditional Persian summer drink made from vinegar, honey, and herbs. Tangy, sweet, and weirdly refreshing. You sip cautiously. Your tongue doesn't quite know what to do with the vinegar at first, but the sweetness and the chilling herbs calm the protest. So now that you're sitting here, dressed for the sun, shaded by a qanat-fed courtyard tree, let's talk cooling from the inside out. Ancient Persians believed deeply in the balance of humors, the concept that certain foods produced heat and others brought coolness. It wasn't just a philosophy, it was a survival strategy.
Water, obviously, was central, but rarely was it drunk plain and lukewarm. Cool water drawn from deep qanats or stored in clay vessels was often aromatized, rose water, mint, or sometimes a touch of citrus peel. And yes, while true citrus didn't arrive in Persia until later periods, early varieties of sour fruits like pomegranate and unripe grapes were already doing heavy lifting in flavor and cooling. But it gets more interesting. You learn quickly that cold foods in Persian tradition weren't always about temperature. A cold food could be room temperature, but classified as cold-natured. Think cucumbers, yogurt, barley, or sour cherries. Imagine being offered a bowl of asha dog, a chilled yogurt soup flecked with herbs and rice. Tangy, rich, and oddly comforting in the heat. You might raise an eyebrow at drinking soup in summer, but your internal thermostat says thank you. Historians still argue whether such soups were originally medicinal or purely culinary. What's certain is their long lineage. Versions of these recipes appear in 10th century medical treatises and in kitchens today. Here's a curious one: snow sherbet. Yes, really. In mountainous regions like the Alborz or Zagros, snow was collected during winter and stored in deep insulated pits, sometimes sealed with ash or straw. Come summer, it was shaved or chipped and mixed with syrups, often rosewater, saffron, or fruit concentrates, to make sherbat-e-yak, a dessert, a drink, a celebration. You take a spoonful and it's a flavor more emotional than physical. Somehow, you feel a Persian grandmother fussing over you, urging you to eat before it melts. Now, let's talk about fruits. Persians were the OG fruit snobs in the most elegant way. Their gardens were planned around flavor calendars, mulberries ripening in spring, pomegranates by autumn, and watermelon for the sticky peak of summer. Not the genetically swollen kind you find in modern supermarkets, but smaller, denser, and always served chilled, either from clay coolers or submerged in qanat streams until mealtime.
A popular trick? Slice watermelon, sprinkle with ground sumac and salt, then wrap in a grape leaf and place it in the shade for an hour. You take a bite. It's juicy, tart, and not unlike a vitamin-packed air conditioner for your mouth. And then there's sour plums. Chewed slowly, almost meditatively, they were said to cleanse the heat from your body. Some people carried a pouch of dried ones during long travels, rehydrating them with water as needed. You try one now, dry, wrinkled, and face-puckeringly strong. You weren't ready. No one is. Let's not forget herbs. Fresh basil, mint, dill, and fenugreek weren't garnish. They were served in handfuls, like salad or breath fresheners, depending on your need. Eating herbs raw with bread and cheese was standard practice, and it had cooling effects that weren't just culinary. They genuinely helped regulate internal body temperature. One folk belief even claimed that chewing mint while sitting in shade could trick your body into thinking it was evening. You sit, chew,
and consider whether you're being psychologically manipulated by a plant. Doesn't matter. It's working. Of course, not all foods were welcome. Hot-natured ingredients like garlic, onions, or certain red meats were reduced or carefully balanced with cooling elements. Persians weren't shy about spices, but they wielded them like pharmacists, not chili chasers. And here's a quirky debate. Did ancient Persians ice their wine? Some historians say yes, especially in royal courts, where imported snow was a sign of opulence. Others say wine, being hot in nature, was rarely chilled lest it unbalance the drinker's inner temperament. The debate rages on, and you sip your hypothetical vintage with imagined dignity. You start to see food not just as sustenance, but as air conditioning in edible form. Even breakfast had its moment. A simple bowl of barley porridge topped with crushed dates and goat's milk, served at dawn before the heat rolled in. Not flashy, but deeply sustaining.
Barley, by the way, was considered highly cooling. Boiled into barley water, it became a cure-all drink for the overheated, the overworked, and the overexposed. It's worth noting that much of this culinary wisdom didn't come from chefs, but healers. Persian physicians like Avicenna or Ibn Sina, if you're in a scholarly mood, documented entire treatises on food, body temperament, and seasonal adaptation. His canon of medicine didn't just diagnose illness, it prescribed menus based on your internal weather. And you? Tonight, you're advised to stick with cucumbers, yogurt, mint, and a side of water infused with sour grape syrup. No heavy meats, no fried dough, not if you want to sleep without sweating through your pillow. So, you do as told, and as you lean back, belly cooled, body shaded, and clothes breathing gently against your skin, you feel less like you're fighting the heat, and more like you're in conversation with it. Not every culture takes this approach, but Persia, from qanats to yogurt soups, seems to have been quietly chatting with summer for millennia. Your sandals slap softly against the smooth stone as you wander into the heart of an ancient Persian home. There's no dramatic threshold, no creaky gate, no ominous arch. Just a gentle transition from the sun-bleached courtyard into a darker, quieter place. Welcome to the Andaruni. This is the inner sanctum of the house, the woman's quarters, the private sphere, the architectural equivalent of a whispered lullaby. And it's where some of the most ingenious heat-beating strategies play out. You step in and instantly feel it, a noticeable drop in temperature, maybe 5-6 degrees. Maybe it's just psychological, but probably not. The air is still but cool. The thick mud brick walls, at least 2 feet wide, have been soaking up the sun all day, and somehow that's what keeps the room comfortable. It's thermal inertia, Persian style. You trail your fingers along the wall. It's cool. Not just cooler than outside, actually cool. And no, there's no magic. Just centuries of architectural science passed down like a family recipe.
Let's talk about layout. Persian homes weren't just houses, they were heat-dodging labyrinths. The walls are arranged to maximize shade, with courtyards acting as light wells. Trees are planted with intention. Pomegranate and fig, their branches low and wide, create layered shadow. You're not just living around nature, you're using it like a fan. And every house has a sardab. A what now? A sardab, literally cold water place, is a basement-level room designed for one purpose: staying cool.
These weren't moldy, scary basements. They were carefully planned chambers aligned with the qanats system, allowing air and moisture to seep in and regulate the temperature. Some sardabs were even equipped with water channels running directly beneath them. You lie down on the mat and a soft draft caresses your face. You could sleep here forever. Now the real star of this section? The badgir. Yes, we've already mentioned them, but here they shine. Badgirs, or windcatchers, weren't just towers sticking out of rooftops like decorative chimneys. They were the lungs of the home. Inside the anduruni, a vent in the ceiling connects to the windcatcher. When the breeze picks up outside, it gets channeled downward. If there's no breeze, the temperature difference between the shaded tower and the hot courtyard creates airflow anyway. You feel it now. A whisper of wind brushing your cheek, gently stirring the edge of your robe. No fans, no buzzing motors, just physics in a robe and sandals. Some wealthier homes went a step further. They built multi-directional wind catchers, four-sided towers designed to catch wind from any direction. On calm days, water was poured into small rooftop basins to cool the air further through evaporation. It's essentially a 6th century swamp cooler, eco-friendly, zero emissions, and weirdly elegant. Historians still argue whether badgirs were developed independently in Persia or inspired by earlier Egyptian or Babylonian designs, but nobody argues about who perfected them. Persia took wind and made it an interior decorator.
There's an open debate around one rare structure you pass. A spiral tower with a peculiar vertical shaft and small water basin at the bottom. Some believe it was an early attempt at a passive air conditioning system that combined wind, water, and convection. Others think it was for ceremonial purposes. The mystery remains deliciously unresolved. You take a detour now through a narrow hallway designed to confuse hot air. It's a bit of a maze, but that's the point. Every twist and turn interrupts airflow, keeping the heat from building momentum. You're not just walking through a home, you're walking through a heat filter. The floors, tiled with glazed ceramics, give off a satisfying chill. You sit down. The coolness seeps through your clothes, through your skin, into your spine. You sigh, audibly. Even the roofs weren't neglected in this thermal symphony. They were domed, not just for style, but for efficiency. Heat rises, and the domes capture it high above your head. The thicker the walls and higher the ceilings, the more time it took for heat to reach you. It's like living in a thermos, but prettier. And the most subtle touch? Light. Persian homes were masters of dappled brightness. Narrow windows high on the walls. Wooden screens called panjara, casting lace-like shadows. The more indirect the light, the cooler the room stays. And you, sleepy traveler, are wrapped in a shifting pattern of gold and shade that dances across your legs like a lazy river. Here's a fun side note. Some houses had perfumed air tunnels. Yes, tunnels that passed air over pots of rosewater or herbs before drifting into rooms. Was it practical? Maybe. Was it pleasant? Undeniably. You inhale now, and the faint scent of cardamom and dried lime clings to the air like an old lullaby.
Even at night, cooling didn't stop. The flat rooftops were used for sleeping under the stars. Families would bring out mattresses, eat supper under the moon, and let the night breeze lull them to sleep. You climb up now, yes, slowly, carefully, and stretch out on a thin cotton bedroll. The sky overhead is a slow swirl of navy and stars. The city sounds fade. A wind stirs the edge of your blanket. You blink,
Once and again. Persia, you realize, didn't fight summer. It didn't escape it. It invited it in, gave it sherbet, and made it behave. And so, lying there, not a single fan in sight, you understand what true cooling looks like. It looks like cooperation with nature, not domination. It looks like an ancient house with mud brick lungs, rose-scented air, and walls that whisper, "Sleep, you're safe here." You wake to soft morning light pressing gently against your closed eyelids. Somewhere a sparrow chirps once, then again, before thinking better of it and falling silent. You're still lying on the roof of a centuries-old Persian home, and the air is already beginning to warm. But not too fast, not too harshly, just enough to suggest that it's time to get moving, slowly. You ease yourself upright. Below you, the city is yawning. The rooftops form a patchwork of domes, chimneys, and yes, those iconic bajgirs, windcatchers that now seem to stretch up like sleepy arms greeting the dawn. Today you're off to learn how ancient Persians managed indoor air circulation without electricity, ceiling fans, or even window panes. And somehow, they made it look graceful. You start with the central courtyard once again. It's not just a pretty feature for sipping pomegranate juice under a mulberry tree. It's the core of the house's microclimate. The surrounding rooms open onto it like petals on a flower. Every door, every window oriented to maximize airflow through clever design. Now step into one of those rooms, a long, low space with high windows and slatted wooden doors that can be opened or closed based on the breeze. The furniture is sparse, low cushions, hand-woven mats, maybe a carved wooden chest in the corner. The key isn't what's in the room, but what moves through it.
You notice it as soon as the morning breeze slips in through one door and out the other. The room is like a throat inhaling the day. You're sitting in a natural cross-ventilation zone, a space that acts like a breathing creature. And guess what? That's by design. The ancients understood something most of us forget. Hot air rises, cold air sinks, and wind likes a good shortcut. So they built with thermal gradients in mind. That sardab from earlier, it didn't just cool itself, it created suction. The cooler air down below would draw warmer air downward, moving heat out and pulling fresh air in. This wasn't just clever, it was passive. No energy cost, just gravity and pressure doing a delicate, invisible waltz. Now, turn your head. See that thick curtain hanging by the doorway? It's not just for privacy. It's made from woven goat hair, heavy but breathable. It traps heat or lets wind through, depending on how it's arranged. When soaked in water, it turns into a basic evaporative cooling system. You wave it gently and feel the damp coolness waft your way. Suddenly, you're a human air filter. Congratulations. Historians still argue whether the earliest forms of porous screen partitions, like mashrabiyah in Arabic architecture, originated in Persia or evolved independently. What's clear is that Persian designs took these concepts seriously. The balance of ventilation and visibility was a hallmark of the culture. Stay cool, stay private, look elegant doing it. You make your way to another part of the house, what would have been the kitchen. Not always the hottest place in a home? Think again. In Persian houses, the kitchen was often strategically placed on the north side, away from direct sunlight, and sometimes even semi-detached from the main residence to prevent heat buildup. And ventilation here? Remarkably precise. Small chimney-like holes near the cooking fire vented smoke, yes, but also created a mini vacuum that helped draw fresh air in. It's a little like a stovetop hood, if your stovetop hood was made of sun-dried mud and decorated with geometric tilework.
You pause near a small ceiling opening And your inner nerd perks up. This is more than a skylight, it's a ventilation chimney, designed to allow hot air to escape vertically, while encouraging cool air to circulate below. You'd call it convection, they called it good living. One of your hosts walks by, smiling, and sets down a small bowl of sour cherry syrup in water, an early Persian version of a heat-fighting drink. You sip slowly, letting the sweet-sour tang settle on your tongue. As it does, you begin to notice something odd: the silence. No humming, no whirring, just a soft creaking of wood, a gentle brushing of wind against plaster. The entire house is alive with breath, but barely makes a sound. It's cooling as a philosophy, not a battle. There's an ongoing scholarly debate about how much of this air circulation strategy was intentional engineering versus intuitive tradition. Did they measure the airflow? Probably not. But over generations, they refined it, responding to experience, not spreadsheets. You start to think that maybe our ancestors were more scientific than we give them credit for, just in a different language. One quirky detail catches your eye in the corner of the room: a small, intricate wooden lattice panel embedded in the wall. It doesn't connect to anything, just hangs there. But as you move past it, you feel a slight breeze. It's not decorative, it's an air pathway, designed to direct flow in a specific direction, possibly even from one floor to another. You suddenly understand that these homes weren't just structures. They were instruments, tuning forks for airflow. You didn't just live inside them, you harmonized with them. Outside, the sun climbs higher. The air begins to shimmer with heat. But inside, where the house's clever lungs and shady bones are at work, you remain untouched. You recline on a low cushion, sipping your sour cherry syrup, and feel the gentle exhale of an ancient science so quiet it's almost sacred. And as you drift again, the last thing you hear is a whisper of wind brushing past your ear, like it's saying, "Don't worry, I've got you."
A soft clatter startles you awake, not a jarring one, just the kind of distant sound a ceramic water jug might make when someone bumps it gently against a wall. The kind of sound that echoes lazily across a courtyard, folds around corners, and loses interest halfway down a corridor. You're back in your shady corner of the Persian home, and it's early afternoon now. The heat outside has swelled to its peak, but here inside, everything remains still, cool, almost disinterested in the scorching sun overhead. You stretch slowly, bones cracking like old timber beams, and decide to explore another element of the architecture, one that's both humble and strangely elegant: materials. Because cooling a home in 120-degree heat wasn't just about airflow or layout, it started with what the house was made of. You run your fingers across a wall. It's not plaster in the modern sense. It's kesht, sun-dried mud brick made from clay and straw, shaped by hand and baked slowly in the summer heat. No artificial kilns, just the same sun that now threatens to toast your scalp if you step outside for too long. These bricks are humble, yes, but brilliant. Their thermal mass is astonishing. During the day, they absorb heat slowly, preventing the inside of the home from turning into a tandoor oven. At night, as the outside cools, they release the stored warmth, balancing temperatures like a desert-weighted blanket. Not flashy, just functional. And if you look up, don't worry, the ceiling won't collapse. You'll see wooden beams arranged in calm, patient lines, often poplar or willow,
woods native to the region and naturally resistant to warping in heat. These beams supported layered roofs made of earth, straw, and stone, a kind of sandwich designed to insulate against both sun and cold. Modern architects still argue whether the layering technique used in ancient Persian roofs was the most effective for desert environments, or whether lighter, ventilated structures might have done better. But you know what? This roof hasn't collapsed in 800 years, so that's one vote in favor of Team Mud. Now about those floors. They're not tile, at least not everywhere. In rooms meant to stay cool, the floors were often packed earth, sometimes finished with lime and straw, to create a soft, breathable surface. And in wealthier homes, hand-painted ceramic tiles that looked more like art than flooring, designed to reflect light, stay cool to the touch, and make your bare feet feel like royalty. You wander into a different room, a slightly raised platform with cushions arranged in a semicircle, a mehman khan or guest room, reserved for friends, visiting scholars, or that one uncle who always showed up unannounced and stayed for weeks. It's placed intentionally on the east-facing side of the house, so that by the time guests were fully awake, the sun had moved on, leaving the room in gentle shade. And because Persian hospitality traditions practically demanded that guests be comfortable and constantly fed, these rooms often had the best cooling features. You sit down and notice the wall recesses, niches carved into the thick walls, perfect for tucking away a lamp, a small jug, or maybe a fragrant sprig of myrtle. But they weren't just decorative. Those niches created uneven wall thickness, which helped disrupt heat flow. It's a quiet, passive way of saying, "Not today, son." In the corner, an old clay jar sits in the shadows, still beaded with condensation. It's a zir-zamin pot, designed to store water in a naturally cooler section of the house, often placed near a wall that stays shaded most of the day. If you hold your hand above the opening, you'll feel the faintest upward puff of cooler air. It's not magic, it's evaporative cooling, Persian style. And here's a quirky little detail. Some wealthier homes had double walls in specific areas. That's right, walls behind walls. The cavity between them wasn't wasted. It acted like a buffer zone, absorbing heat from outside before it could reach the interior. Modern energy-efficient buildings use the same trick, just with a lot more jargon. Historians still debate whether these double-wall techniques were widely known innovations or the kind of luxury reserved only for palaces and mansions. But evidence shows that even modest homes used variations of this approach, proof that ingenuity wasn't reserved for the elite. As you recline, another thought strikes you. This wasn't just architecture, it was life philosophy in mud and timber. A kind of why fight the desert when you can outwit it approach. The homes were never meant to be fortresses against the climate. They were companions, cooled by cooperation. You lean your head back, gaze up at the ceiling, and listen to the wind gently tugging at the edges of the windcatcher above. There's a rhythm to it, like breathing. And then you remember a delightful oddity: rooftop sleeping platforms. In some Persian cities, families would sleep outside in the summer on raised beds called takhts, often with wet sheets hung over them to create a kind of DIY air conditioning. The breeze blowing through the wet fabric would cool the air, and the stars would do the rest. No electricity, no wires, just wind, water, and stars. You drift off again thinking, maybe the Persians had the right idea. Maybe comfort doesn't need to be loud, fast, or neon lit. Maybe it can be quiet, dusty, hand-built, and perfect. Your dreams slip into soft spirals. Nothing urgent, just long stretches of sun-dappled courtyards and a whisper of sandals across baked earth. But then something new stirs. Not the sound of water or the tug of wind. This is scent. Warm, earthy, and threaded with sweetness. You follow your nose, or rather your imagination's nose, into the deeper chambers of the home. Because in ancient Persia, cooling the home wasn't just about temperature. It was about ambiance. You're in what feels like a small internal hall. The air is darker here, thicker. Not in a suffocating way, more like the hush of a library at sunset. The walls are lined with perforated wooden panels, mashrabiyya screens, intricate like lace, carved from walnut or cedar. Their patterns filter the sunlight into soft, shifting shadows. No harsh beams, just delicate freckles of warmth. And through those panels wafts a smell, rosewater. Not sprayed from a bottle, but gently rising from shallow dishes placed strategically beneath shaded windows. These evaporative dishes weren't just for scent, they cooled the air too. As the rosewater evaporated, it pulled heat from the room and left a faint floral chill. Imagine that, climate control with a side of poetry. You lean closer and another aroma joins the party. Frankincense? Maybe sandalwood. In wealthier homes, incense burners were placed near entrances or around courtyards. The smoke not only masked more human smells. Yes, indoor plumbing was, sporadic. But it also helped purify the air and keep flies away. Multitasking, ancient style. Historians still debate whether these incense rituals had medical roots. Some argue they were based in humoral theory, aiming to balance bodily moisture and dryness. But others believe they were simply aesthetic, pleasant, peaceful. Which, frankly, is reason enough. As you wander deeper, you notice how light itself is choreographed to aid cooling. The thick walls and narrow passageways are not randomly arranged. They're designed to minimize sunlight in summer while still letting it in during winter. It's a solar strategy millennia ahead of its time. Modern passive solar architects study these layouts like sacred texts.
One odd thing catches your eye. Mirrors. Not the kind you'd check your outfit in. These are polished brass or silver panels mounted at angles, reflecting light deeper into darker rooms. But they do more than brighten. They redirect heatless light, leaving out the scorching parts. It's like installing a sunbeam, minus the sunburn. You duck into a smaller room off to the side. It's a private prayer nook. Simple, with a worn rug and a niche pointing toward Mecca. These rooms were often the coolest in the house, located deep in the center, buffered by layers of walls. It wasn't just spiritual, it was spatial strategy. When you needed peace, silence, and a break from the heat, you came here. And here's a gentle oddity. Some homes had walls painted in specific colors to assist cooling. Light blues and pale ochres weren't just trendy. They reflected more sunlight and made the rooms feel mentally cooler. There's even evidence that in certain regions, egg whites were mixed into lime washes to add a faint gloss, boosting reflectivity. Decorative eggshells, literally. As you lie on the rug and feel the faint chill of stone beneath you,
Another design quirk floats into your mind: the placement of doors. Ever noticed how they don't all line up perfectly? That's no accident. By offsetting doorways, Persians disrupted straight-line airflow, slowing hot gusts from blasting straight through and letting cool drafts linger longer in rooms. And then the sounds return: a slow drip, maybe from a qanat maintenance pipe, a creak of wood expanding under late afternoon sun, a boy's laughter echoing from a neighboring rooftop. It's not silence exactly. It's a curated soundscape. Cooling the home, you realize, wasn't just a battle against heat. It was a philosophy of sensation management. Touch, sound, light, scent, and space all worked together like quiet musicians in a desert orchestra. Each sense cooled, comforted, and calmed. You make your way back to the main courtyard, where an orange tree leans lazily over the pool. Its branches hang low, heavy with fruit. Not quite ripe yet, but soon. The stone path is warm under your feet, but the water is cool. Always cool. Even now.
It's a small, rare luxury, but not unheard of. Ancient Persian cities had ice storage systems, some connected to yakchals, others linked to caravan deliveries. The presence of a cold drink wasn't impossible. It was just precious, and it tasted even better for its improbability. You sit again beneath the windcatcher. The sun is beginning to tilt westward, casting longer shadows across the tiles. The breeze is still moving, slower now, more thoughtful, like even the air knows it's nearly time to rest. The afternoon stretches long and slow across the baked adobe walls. You're still sitting under the shadow of the windcatcher, its gentle hush now as familiar as your own breath. It's almost as though the entire house is exhaling with you, its ancient architecture settling into evening. Here, in this final quarter of our journey, we ease into the true magic of Persian cooling, the way all these elements, windcatchers, qanats, shade trees, incense smoke, and rosewater, come together into a single, seamless experience. Not just functional, not just pretty, but fully immersive. A home designed not just to withstand the sun, but to invite serenity. From your seat by the courtyard, you take in the last piece of the puzzle: daily rituals. Because no matter how brilliant the architecture, homes need people. People who know how to live in sync with the rhythm of the desert. In the cooler morning hours, doors and shutters are opened to let in the dawn air. By late morning, everything is sealed tight, curtains drawn, screens closed, meals cooked early to avoid heating up the kitchen. And after the midday hush, what modern folks might call a siesta, life slowly resumes. The family gathers in shaded areas like this courtyard or the iwan, those deep vaulted porches that were the social hubs of Persian homes. With cushions lining the cool tiles, water jugs sweating in clay holders, and the soft slosh of a basin in the background, stories are shared. Nothing urgent, just tales of the neighbor's goat getting loose again, or the best way to pickle turnips in summer.
You shift slightly and notice something beneath the cushions. Woven reed mats. These weren't just decorative. They offered airflow beneath the body, absorbing sweat and helping sleepers stay cool. Combine that with lightweight cotton robes, and you've got yourself the ancient equivalent of a summer pajama set. Historians still debate how much of this was scientific design versus generational wisdom. But let's be honest, whether it was trial and error or architectural genius, it worked. And it worked for centuries.
Some of these methods are still used today in Yazd and other cities across Iran, long after the empires that built them crumbled. You trace your fingers along a painted tile. It's blue and white, chipped at the corner. A tiny scene of a horse beneath a tree. Maybe a part of some long-lost mosaic. Maybe a child painted it. You'll never know, but that tile, like the house around it, still does its quiet job, holding coolness. Above you, the sky turns that dusky lavender that only deserts manage, somewhere between dream and ash. A few stars are already winking on. The wind has slowed, but the air is still moving, still breathing, like the house itself is alive. You lean back on the cushions. The sounds around you have softened. The call of a cellar in the distance, the rustle of date palms, the clink of pottery being washed. The house exhales again.
And so do you. Because in the end, what the ancient Persians perfected wasn't just heat management. It was human comfort. Not air conditioning as we know it, but a kind of emotional air conditioning. A deep, full-body sigh of relief. They didn't just cool rooms, they cooled moments, cooled memories, cooled entire lives. So here you are, in the stillness of a home that knew how to breathe long before we did. A home that knew stillness was a virtue, that silence could be shaped, that calm could be designed. The cushions sink beneath you, warm on top, cool underneath. The stars drift higher. Somewhere in the corner, a clay jar drips faintly into a bowl. The qanat hums on, quiet and endless, like a whisper from the mountains. You smile, maybe, as your eyes slip closed, because now you know they didn't need ice. They had the wind. And now, as we leave this journey behind, you let the last sensations linger. Soft shadows dancing on mudbrook walls, the perfume of rosewater clinging to the air, the endless hush of windcatchers cradling your thoughts. There's nothing left to do, no place to be but here. Your breath slows, your body sinks just a little deeper. Even the thoughts that wandered with you through those desert courtyards have grown quiet now, curled up beside you, like old friends settling in for sleep. The past doesn't ask anything of you, not tonight. It simply offers its stillness, its time-tested calm, the kind of peace that comes not from silence, but from balance, from rooms built to breathe with you, from nights built to rest inside. So just stay here, where the stones are cool and the air is kind. Let the desert sky fold over you like a soft blanket. Let your dreams unfurl like the shadows beneath the pomegranate trees. The wind knows its way home, and now, so do you. Sleep well.